Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, your co-founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategies podcast and house here on the Clubhouse every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing education, networking, and strategy. So we'll get started here in just a few minutes. We're going to invite a lot of our peeps in and get rocking and rolling here. And then I'll bring some moderators up and then we'll get into our discussion, give you an update of November events, of course, which I'm excited about that as well. And we'll give you some updates to the market. In the interim, I always want to put a thank you out to a couple people that have been supporting the podcast from the very beginning. One, our moderators. They take the time every Sunday morning to provide insight, education, and trend discussions every Sunday. I mean, 9 a.m. We're here every Sunday. We're celebrating our 150th episode. We now have scheduled discussions rolling into the end of December right now. So if you want to follow all our discussions and see what's going on, please come to creativebirthstrategies.com, josephvscarice.com, or you could just go into our calendar of events here on our podcast to get rocking and rolling here. Um, and yeah, there's just so much going on. And then we have the events. We have our white label discussions that we're going to be having coming up, which, 1 second, mute that. So we'll get rocking here and going in regards to our discussion. First, obviously our discussion this morning, real estate investment property audit checklist, which I think is a really great subject. But let's get our peeps out of the way that we want to thank every Sunday morning. One, Mr. Yordell Perkins, friend, colleague, business partner, and associate. We are working on so much CRM and SEO work right now behind the scenes. A lot of this will be coming out to the forefront. I'm spending thousands of dollars just to kind of make sure the brand is there, everything is there from a marketing perspective. One, to help support my following and the podcast and my lending platform. But it's just we're helping others too, which we're giving back. So being a nationwide direct private lender, so many people come to you for suggestions, mentoring, coaching. But at the end of the day, I have to, put loans in. So it really has to do with a deal by deal basis. And Yordell has been such a great backbone to this group and my partnership with him and Perkatech, our social media team that we're working with diligently. We just did a major move from Constant Contact to Go High Level, which we're excited about that, where we're going to have text messaging marketing, the email marketing, some other things that we're going to be tying in, which is AI video, etc. So I think it's really important for transition and growth. And Yordell and I are always looking at those opportunities to help our teams and what we do internally, but also to help others at the same time. I want to thank Miss Linda Pelagas. She's been making some great introductions at Realty 411 for me to have some podcasts coming up in the near future here on Clubhouse as well as the podcast. We're scheduling a lot of those things out. And hang on 1 second, I see something here. I just have to delete a little spam here. Sorry about that. Sorry, I've seen some spam going on, so I got to delete that right away. And when that's deleted. She has been just a vital colleague for the last several years in coordinating various events and now making introductions for present and future discussions here on the podcast as well. I want to thank Mr. Eric Moss of MB Capital Solutions, who has been a referral partner, colleague, and friend for the past 18 years, where we provide unsecured business lines of credit for investors throughout the country. And then I'm a nationwide direct private lender providing white label and underwriting, processing, origination for non-QM lending, strictly for investors only. And we're in the single family through 4 family space, multifamily 5+ units, probably up to about 20 units now in the DSCR space, mixed use, anything from 2 to 20 we're comfortable with in the DSCR space now, as long as there's a 50-50 blend to the residential and commercial at least. And then it's always got a favor in the favor of residential, really more so than ever before. Fixed to rent, fixed to flip, meaning bird strategy or flippers or new construction. We have some great products that we're rolling out. And then we're doing general construction lines of credit as well. But one product that I have to stand out coming into the end of this year that is going to be starting in about a week, we are going now up to 97% loan to cost on purchase and 100% on construction rehab, and up to 70% to 70% loan of value, 75% loan of value on after repair value for 1 through 4 fixed to rents or fixed to flips. Pricing's in the single digits. We're now rates are starting at 8.75 on construction financing, and on DSCR we are now starting at 5.75. Rates are kind of hovering anywhere between 6.1 to like 6 to 6.375. We can go up to 75% cash out, 80% on all purchases, 1 through 4. On the 5+ units, 5 through 20, we can go up to 75%, whether refinance or purchase. Same thing on mixed use. But the fixed to rent product that's now going up to 97%. Now, this also is based on 6 transactions done for rehab or flipping in the past 4 years. So we need to verify that with our AI to make sure you hit that. Everything else before that, you're somewhere between 80 and 90% on purchase, 100% construction. You're still in the single digits now in construction money. Being a direct lender, that's where some of the benefits fall for clients now, where we're now single digits in the bridge money for that fixed to rent, fixed to flip, and a lot more realtors are coming to the front line. And I think this discussion today kind of ties into a lot of it, which excites me a little bit. Then we're going to first let's update us all on the market. Rates have been wacky. Okay, so the base coupon rate with the announcement of the Fed actually creeped up a little bit on the 30-year fix at around 6.28. So rates are probably in the sixes-ish, mid to high sixes for the if you're going to more the Freddie Fannie route, regulated route, whether home buying and or investor in your personal name. It's going to be a really wacky November. You know, the Fed's saying there might not do another Fed rate drop, but you know they say no rate cuts. We'll see. I think they're going to do an emergency one. The tariffs are also expected to start showing up more in consumer pricing as holiday shopping season starts. So we'll see how that impacts the Fed. You know, the market from a inventory has been kind of stale a little bit. You know, so there's some concerns there. But rates are not dropping right now. They're kind of just staying still. On the commercial side, the base rate, coupon rate starts at 5.75. We've already baked in the rates for the betterment for investors. So it's very, very aggressive, to say the least, right now in the DSCR space. Like I said, we're probably with the coupon rate at 5.75, we're probably hovering between 6 and 6.5 on rates on DSCR, whether refinance or purchase, depending on credit score. Credit score requirements are changing around a little bit. We still are looking for 660 or better. Foreign national loans have been impacted a little. They're cutting back a little bit. That's a showing of concern for me, because that's the last time I saw that coming around was 2007. So right now, cash out for foreign national has been cut back to 60 to 65% instead of 70. You're still on the purchase side of foreign national at 75%, but I have a feeling that might reel back to 70%. So there are some concerns going into the last couple of months of the year, but still very positive for investors moving into the market heavily on inventory, scaling, and opportunities. I'm seeing a more positive trend at the events I've been attending regionally. So that ties into some of the events that we have coming up in November. I'm very excited about announcing that we have our second Monday, second Saturday in Philadelphia at TCS Property Management up on the rooftop deck. The evening event starts at 6:30. The morning event, the mastermind, starts at 10 a.m. And then second Wednesday of the month, we're in the Lehigh Valley up at the Bethlehem Brew Works at Fegley's, 6:30 p.m. again. Excited about talking about our ultimate asset-based lending white label workshop coming up November 15th in Philadelphia. We have 25 people registered, that's really where I want to be, 25 to 30 people. I might cap it at 30. The people that are coming will be invited to a private mastermind happy hour on Friday evening with an event to be a location to be disclosed to them only. Then all day 9 to 3, we're going to dive into white labeling, brokering loans, understanding loans, and then that'll go till 3 p.m. We'll probably have some time afterwards. I will be leaving Sunday open for one-on-ones post the podcast, which I will be broadcasting the podcast from the rooftop deck in TCS Property Management at 2nd and Chestnut. So I'm excited about that. Then we have another event in North Jersey, November 17th with Jumpstart Nork. That's at City Rub. And then to finish off the month, we're going to be in Laurel, Maryland, with the Real Estate Masterminds strategy at the Sky Vibe Lounge from 6 to 8 p.m. happy hour networking. So we're growing accordingly. We got the podcast solid. We're not going to stop this podcast here on Clubhouse. We're going to keep moving it into the new year. Love to see where we get to 200th episode. So let's talk about some market trends that I saw this past week. I posted some articles. If you're not following me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you're not getting to see all this stuff, but we're posting all these articles and newsletters out. Zombie foreclosure vacancy rates are trending up a little bit. Be a little concerned there. Rents keep falling across many U.S. metro areas. And why this is because of a lot of the Class B multifamily buildings that were supposed to be condo conversions are now becoming rentals. It's kind of saturating the market. It's compressing DSCR on the smaller investment, single family row through 4-family, or even the small balance multifamily. So I'm a little concerned about that. So that means, to me, DSCR, maybe you were making 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. Now you're making 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Your days on the market to occupy the unit as a tenant is now taking a little longer. We're talking like 3 months now on average to identify the right tenant. So that's interesting to watch. That was an interesting article. I did post that yesterday. So let's see if there's any other articles that catch my eye. Pending home sales flat in September. That's kind of common in the fall market. Office conversions hit a record high as cities embrace adaptive reuse. That's an interesting, that's an article I will post out as well. So let's tie into our discussion today. Real estate investment property audit checklist, right? It's ideal for BRRRR investors and flippers and buy and hold landlords who want to evaluate and optimize protect their portfolios. Verifying that the property was purchased correctly aligns with your investment strategy. Okay, for purchase price versus appraisal value versus after repair value, title is a report. It's a clean. The inspection report is a reviewed foundation, roof, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, zoning compliance, and permits verified. Closing statement we review for accuracy. What's about your market comps? And then neighborhood demographic and trend evaluation. Also, you need to look at the financial and cash flow audit, ensuring the property performs to expectations. Rent roll and lease agreements verified. Operating expenses, taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance updated. Look at evaluating vacancy and CapEx reserves accounted for. What is your NOI? What is your cash on cash return? What is your debt service recalculated? Is there going to be a property tax reassessment on your in your property? What do those projections look like? What's your rate going to look like roughly? What are you using as a number to kind of evaluate your DSCR, your amortization? Is there a prepayment penalty? What is there a 5-year arm to this? Are you aware of what that looks like? Yeah, great. You got a lower rate, but you got a 5-year reset. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. Then you got to look at your rehab and construction audit. Like, what's your scope of work? I mean, anyone that's listening in, if you don't have an example scope of work for rehab or flipping, please email me or text me at my number 215-290-5108 and request a scope of work spreadsheet. You need it as a real estate agent, real estate investor, real estate professional when you're working with investors, right? Because there's always change orders and permits and costs and all these different things that you're not taking into account. Leverage my scope of work because it ties into lending and it ties into what a lender needs to see, right? So you need to understand that. And then there's management and operation audits. Like who's the property management company managing your properties or will be managing your properties? So what does that look like? What's their tenant screening process? Are they compliant? What is their maintenance response time? And how are they handling rent collection and delinquency procedures? What are their vendor contracts and pricing and performance? And how are they handling and providing you information on security deposits? These are quarterly management scorecards that you need to grade on occupancy, expense control, and maintenance response. And then you got to really think about some other things when it comes to risk and compliance. When's the last time you sat down with your insurance agent to evaluate your policies? Property liability, flood, builder's risk, tying in it from the beginning to the end. Like, but you're not going to keep builder's risk when you stabilize the property. You're going to put it into a stabilized policy, right? You're going to be closing the property in the name of an LLC as if it's an investment property. Is property tax and mortgage and insurance escrowed with the mortgage with the lender? Yes. 9 times out of 10, yes. If it's not a bank, if it's a non-QM lender, absolutely. Do you need or we need to be aware of the local landlord licensing and inspection records? And are they current with your management company if you're leveraging a management company? You need to know this. And then you got to look at the performance and exit strategy. Right? Like, what's the current evaluation versus after repair value, burst on and a purchase basis? What's your equity position and ROI? I just did an underwrite this morning for five plus units for 5 of them for a client of mine. I showed her 70% and 75% what the current rate is and what I think the rate's going to be by the end of November and how that's impacting DSCR, her cash flow, and her cash out, where she could reposition that money to acquire another building or buildings, right? Does your debt service meet lender requirements for refinance or even purchase? And what's the tax implications model? 1031, cost segregation, depreciation recapture. I'm having deeper discussions with clients now on cost segging their properties post refinance or purchase and looking at, does it make sense to do a 10-year depreciation instead of a 27-year depreciation with your real estate portfolio? You need to understand this and have a deeper discussion, whether with your bookkeeper and or your CPA. And then you got to think about your portfolio level strategy alignment. Is there market diversification geographically or asset type? Your leverage ratios and balanced across assets. What's your CapEx and maintenance reserves? What do you have in for the what if per property, not overall, right? And you need to look at what is the exit horizon per property. Does it make sense to hold? Are you thinking about unloading in 5 to 7 years, 10 years? This is a 30-year hold. You really need to do a quarterly property audit count and evaluate 25% of your portfolio per quarter. Stay proactive year round. Mr. Felix Buchanan, good morning, Grand Rising. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to the discussion, real estate investment property audit checklist.
Grand Rising, Joe. Grand Rising, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Felix Buchanan Sr., Buchanan Biz Enterprises, the JLix Group, and team leader of the Keller Williams Legacy team in Baltimore, Maryland. I mean, everything that you said is just right on point. I think it just kind of ties into multiple of the discussions that we've had recently with it being about having a strong team. Everything that you said, from the CPA to whether it being the realtor that you choose, whether it being the attorneys that you choose, everything you have to consistently audit these things consistently. Whether, like you said, with the property management, a lot of people don't take into account that you want to make sure that the property management company that you hire is not just good at this one or two things, and then when it comes down to the other aspects of, can you get tenants out when it's time for eviction and they're not paying the rent? Are you following up and making sure that you're sending them the letters in the proper amount of time? What's your vacancy rate when it comes to have a vacancy? How is it that you handle these vacancies in getting my property filled? When I'm buying a property, what is my exit strategy? You know, if I get this property, and again, if I say, hey, I'm going to flip first, and then now I've had it longer, the markets have changed, the municipalities, they've changed what the codes and what the scope is. So now you've had this property, now you have to pivot in those moments. What are you going to then do with the property at this time? How are you going to be able to still carry the property if you go from 4 months to 10 months? How, you know, what different things are you going to do at that point? Super important. Like, and I mentioned this before in those calls. Like, it's super important to just know what your exit strategies and what your options are. I just, one of the young ladies that I met at Laurel, I met her earlier this week and took her around Baltimore City, Baltimore County, because a lot of people are under the impression that Baltimore is so bad. And then explaining to her that, you know, when she gets the property, certain properties that you want to flip, then you want to do a 1031 exchange, so you're not getting hit with capital gains. Just giving people insight of other things to think of other than, hey, well, I'm gonna just get this property, it's real estate, I'm just gonna make this money. Make sure that you understand what your taxes are. If you have a condo, make sure that you know that every year, if the condo association fees go up, why are they going up? How many people in that condo are paying their fees? Because when it's not that you're not one of the people that's not paying your fees, then you're still responsible for it because it's a condo. Understanding homeowners associations. When you buy properties in homeowners associations, that, you know, the doors have to be the same. You can't put fences in the front if you want to. So just making sure very highly that everything that you're doing with investments, that you're paying very close attention to the numbers in all aspects. After repair values, making sure that you're paying attention to what's going on in the market, how, as you said, with the Fed and the tariffs, material. Like, I'm doing something that I did during COVID from a contracting standpoint, where I put into my agreement now that if the cost of the materials change, then we got to do a change of what the scope of work or what your estimate, because at this point now, I can't say that what the price was that I was going to pay for material in October, that doesn't mean in November and December the cost is going to be the same. So just making sure that you stay abreast and aware of everything, having these different checklists for your team, your contractors, the people that you're using for lending. You know, as you said, what type of loan are you going to use? If you're using hard money lending, you know, are you in position to be able to pivot to refinance out of it? Are you using business funding? If you're using business funding, what's the level of, whether it's a line of credit or it's the credit cards? So you just want to make sure that you're going through all of these different things. And I know that it sounds like a lot, and
It is a lot.
and you want to be, it is.
It's supposed to be.
Uh, and you're in the business. That's why your team is important, of making sure that you have the people that are great at what they do. Don't take mediocre, because then at mediocre, it's, they could do good today, but they might not. Then they might not do good tomorrow. And in this economy, that is just not worth it. It's better to just pay the money, get the proper professional help, and move forward.
Yeah,
knowledge and wisdom.
that's a lot. That's a lot of wisdom. You know, there's a lot of wisdom, and you know, you see this business changing right in front of our eyes.
Mhm.
I just updated our new broker portal, which you and Stephen will obviously be privy to within the next 5 days. It now includes mixed use, multifamily. It's very direct for you to white label now, and it also provides all the guidelines, because there's so many moving parts now in an investment property than ever before. I mean, it's not as heavy as the regulated environment with banks and credit unions, because we're not collecting tax returns, pay stubs, W-2s, or 1099s, but they're taking an extra effort. There's a lot of fraud out there right now, specifically in cities that you and I focus on.
Right.
Baltimore is still battling a $60 million fraud case in real estate, and Philly's not too far behind. I don't think any urban setting city in the country is not being impacted by fraud.
Of course not. I mean,
And
that's easy for it to be a target for scammers.
yeah. So so it's very interesting to watch how this industry is shape shifting. I will be in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks in regards to the industry and see where there's a big event that I'm going to in the Private Lender Association conference I go to every year to see what their thoughts are, where they think it's going. I think we're still in a good place in the non-QM. It's definitely an industry going back to people with experience instead of trying to mold clay and these young men and ladies that don't have transactional experience, giving them too much authority and they don't have enough insight or transactional experience. I mean, if you weren't around for the 2008 mortgage crash, how do you understand a crash? Like, how do you understand any form of trend if you were not part of that? So you need to surround yourself with people that you know, potentially saw the bad, good, and ugly in that space.
Right.
Happy and sad to say, I was part of that process. I saw that.
Yep.
I was.
Yep.
That's where you and I met during that time.
That whole, because I got my license in 2005.
Yeah.
So just imagine being a fresh licensee, and then things are this way, and then you go through such a market crash, and then the entire landscape of real estate changes right in that moment, and you have to change with it so that you can pivot and move to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel what I like about this industry today, Felix, is listen, I have no problem sitting down having a chat with somebody about industry, maybe potentially lightly assisting somebody. But if we don't have a deal to work on, I don't the real transactional professional in this space doesn't have the time to allocate.
Nope.
You know what I mean? I need to associate and affiliate with with people that are going to work with me, not just like doing free handouts for people. And I think that's what's happening in this business. I know it's a little cold, and it is cold. It's served cold. Um, but I think the righteous real estate professional understands time and cost benefit relationship. And if they don't, they need to kind of move on and move away, kind of thing. They kind of disappear. They'll come in and out, but as a licensed professional, as licensed professionals, we're not going to allocate time just to for we that's with our family and friends. That's not in the real estate industry, right? So we have to look at that cost benefit and clearly show the importances to not just ourselves as professionals, but the real estate agent that's involved, the non-QM lender that's involved, and all the other parties that are impacted in that BRRRR or that flip property for the real estate investor, right? Where it's not easy. None of it's easy. They make it sound easy online. You know what I mean? Everybody, oh, I don't, I do this, I do that. Do you really? Right? There's a lot of Facebook legends, as we know, right? Is that a good way to using it? Or clubhouse legends. I'll call them clubhouse legends in their own mind, right? So I'm gonna pivot with a discussion, then I'm gonna go to Steve and Felix. Thank you as always. I'll come back to you in a few minutes. How important is the real estate agent and the non-QM lender in the BRRRR and flip property for the real estate investor? And I think it's a fantastic question, and one that really captures the core synergy of successful real estate investing in today's market. I'm going to break this down, and then we'll go to Steve in a few minutes. But the real estate agent's role on BRRRR and flip deals, a skilled investor-focused real estate agent, is not just a buyer's agent. They are a market strategist, they're a deal finder, they're a negotiator. Their values include deal sourcing and market insight, right? The BRRRR agents identify the undervalued or distressed properties and appreciating neighborhoods with strong and rent to value ratios. The flip, the agents analyze the MLS and off market data to pinpoint homes with high resale potential and low days on the market. Real estate agents that are listening in, we don't care about what it's listed for. We care about the after repair value. We care about the after repair value. We care about the after repair value on both scenarios. We don't care about the listing price. We care about after repair and what the repair numbers are, because that tells us what we're buying it at. And if we can't get it at that, we move on to the next opportunity because it wasn't a opportunity. I want to make that crystal clear for the agents leaving below, listening below. And then there's also the idea of acquisition and negotiation power. I see more real estate agents not negotiating hard enough for their clients in the investment space. It's not a waste of time because there's so much non-QM money out there. A real estate investor will buy 2 to 3 properties every 6 months compared to a home buyer that's once every 5 to 7 years. Think about what I'm saying. There's more opportunity in the buying power or the off market power with the investor, and more opportunities for both sides of the deal, whether it's from a flipping perspective or leasing out the property on behalf of the realtor on the back end, right? So you need to eat a little crow with some of these selling agents or off market people and structure offers creatively, right? So you got to understand inspection clauses and how the fast closing works and what kind of exposure of cash that potential client, based on their experience and their credit score, that the lender is providing to to the lenders to make the deal work. And then what the exit strategy partner is. Okay, what does that look like? Okay, just see what's going on here. All right, hold on 1 second. Give me 1 second. Okay. Then you have the lender, right? The non-QM lender. We are the financial engine that makes these deals repeatable. Their importance lies in the speed and flexibility and structure rather than the traditional credit matrix. So funding the acquisition, non-QM lenders provide fixed to flip, bridge, ground up construction loans, often closing in days, not weeks. They lend on asset-based underwriting, prioritizing deal strength, LTV, LTC, ARV, over borrowed tax returns on or DTI. We do a soft pull. We do order appraisal. There's no such thing as a drive-by in my space. We're inside and outside of that property. Now, are the draws on the rehab AI generated now? Yes, we're going that route where the expedition of you getting your monies back upon completed work is within hours, not days. And in enabling enabling the burst cycle after rehab, DSCR refinance loans help investors pull cash out while keeping the property as a rental. Non-QM products let investors scale portfolios rapidly. No hard cap on property count or income verification. Lenders often guide investors how to stack financing using bridge to DSCR transitions and cross-collateralizing maybe a blanket loan or portfolio loan. And then the white label correspondent programs, which we extend to all our brokers and correspondents and real estate agents. I really want the agents below to listen. You can actually offer capital options to your clients and be white label and not have to disclose on the HUD because we're paying an entity. More agents are getting into it. And why the agent lender partnership matters: deal acquisition, rehab planning, refinance exit, scaling portfolio. We together create the velocity of capital, turning one deal into 5 within a year. How important are we, the real estate agent to the non-QM lender? Critical, very critical, vital, essential. And bottom line, without an investor savvy agent, you're going to miss deals. Without a non-QM lender, you can't scale. Together, we can transform off-market projects into repeatable wealth building systems, the foundation of Burr and Flip models. Stephen, good morning and welcome. Thank you for your patience. Brief overview: who you are, what you do, and thoughts to real estate investment property audit checklist.
Hi, this is Steve Franco with REI Homepage. I'm an investor mostly, and I also run a brokerage firm and a wholesale company and a few other things. I'm doing more of Joe's white label. Can't wait to see you in a couple weeks. I think the auditing checklist goes beyond the kind of obvious stuff of, okay, running your numbers, which is obviously number one, your physical evaluation, your scope of work. And on your scope of work, I think it's hugely important that you pick a contractor or contractors that are experienced. One of the things that I learned, and it was learned very much the hard way, the guy you use for your maintenance, for your broken stuff in your apartments, is not the guy for your flip. Those sole proprietor trucking a truck can't handle, hey, flip this whole house. You need someone that, hire an electrician. If you don't hire a GC, hire an electrician, hire a plumber, skilled trades, because otherwise you're going to save a couple dollars in theory, but you're going to spend a lot more time with a whip and a chair getting it done. Also make sure that I look to, when I do physical audits, I look to the toughest community that I rent in, and what have they asked for? Like one of my communities does a sewer line camera. They actually shove it down, there, and they're not worried about actually stuff leaking out of the sewer into the ground. They're worried about rainwater into the sewer. But now every property I get gets one because the stuff you learn there. So take the hardest when you're going into something during your due diligence, beat the daylights out of it. And I think also the audit checklist goes to a lot of what I think Felix said, or at least alluded to, which is manager managements. You hire a manager, they look all shiny and great. But if you don't keep up on them and make sure they're running your operation the way you work, if you don't keep up on them and make sure whatever, you will end up, having a challenge because they're gonna maybe get a little lax on you or double charge your maintenance or whatever. And get to know, even if you're remote, even if you're not, self-managing, get to know the code officer or the representatives in your communities. Because if there is a problem, they make sure they know how to reach you, and it's not a dead end wall at the property manager level. And the most important, I think the most important thing is always remain liquid enough. I don't take on a property except for this 1031 exchange that I had to because things were squeezed. If it doesn't have 30% maintenance vacancy management, which everyone says is absurd. Well, I want to make sure that I have that extra pad. I want to make sure that I have some liquidity if things don't go right. If I have to carry a hold for, carry a vacancy for a few months, or, the inspector missed something or something. I want to make sure that I have that extra liquidity and that I have, and I have the people around like Joe and various other, team members to really work it. The final thing on my audit, my personal audit, is cultural. Where do I, if I'm not buying locally, where am I comfortable? What type of environment? Am I comfortable with the high value, metro Philly, or am I more comfortable with the C and B markets? If I'm switching to self storage, which I kind of am, self storage and mobile home parks, your audit questions become very different. So make sure you work with someone who's done that sector before to say, hey, this is how we evaluate self storage as opposed to mobile home parks. So to me, the audit goes beyond the actual information. It goes to how well did I source that information? How well did I double check those choices of what I'm auditing? And how ready am I, if I have to jump in and tell the manager, no, you're not doing it right, and here's why. Or I need to replace you as a manager, this is not working out for me. If you don't know your own business, nobody else is going to. That's all I got.
Steve, thank you as always. Your market is very unique because you can't put too much money into the deals because it's all about the cash flow. So you really need to understand cost of construction and renovation in your market, not to over construct or renovate. Because I feel like there's a very standard expectation on rent and cash on cash return in your market. So I appreciate your thoughts to that because your market's not the same as a Philly market. It's not the same as a Baltimore market. If you add, an addition to a property, that's not going to suddenly make a different value. Maybe adding an additional bathroom might help a better cash flow and Section 8 probability or market rent. Or, if it's a 4-1 and turning into a 3-2, I think you're going to have a much better rent performance. But does that cost make sense in that market, right? And that's the audit checklist that has to be evaluated by both the real estate agent, the investor, and the lender.
Yeah, and if I can just jump on that, because one important thing that I run into a lot is people say, oh, I can get 1,500 for this 3-bedroom. Well, maybe you can. There are a lot of people in my market getting that. But I'm going at 1,200. I'm going at 1,150, 1,200 is what I'm expecting. First of all, that's where the HUD numbers are at. And I always say, okay, fall back to what HUD is at. But also, I might get the 1,100, but that person may not they may not have 3 times rent, whatever. But if I run my numbers on 14, 15, if I run my numbers on 5% vacancy and 5% maintenance, and that's not what reality becomes, I'm in trouble. If I run my numbers on 12 and I get 14, I'm happy. So always, especially in secondary and tertiary and even beyond markets where I'm at, making sure you're being overly cautious and making sure you have a reason why. Well, why is it not 1500? Jamara's getting 1500. Well, okay, Jamara's getting it, but according to statistics in the market, this is the average. According to HUD, this is the average. This is why we're at. And the last thing is, who's paying if you're doing rentals? Who's paying what utilities? If your tenants are not paying for their consumables, their electric and their heat primarily up in the Northeast, they're not going to care about the bill. They're going to leave it at 90 and go away for 2 weeks. So always try to separate those out when you can.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I appreciate that, Steve, as always. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this white label portal. It's going to tie into the course on the 15th, which is near perfect timing. I'm going to train on the portal the entire week. So I'm going to know it cold by Friday. I'm going to spend at least an hour or two every week, every day in the morning and train intensely on it. So when we roll it out on the white label courses, not just for the investor, but for the individual that wants to play investor slash broker, or the agent that wants to better underwrite for their clients in the investment space, it's going to be a very solid software. So we're going to make sure all the bells and whistles are working and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But you brought up an interesting discussion in your overview, is remote landlording in 26. It's what's changed, what works, and how you, with the investor mindset, should position yourself, right? And tie it into intersects with burn and flip focus and your scaling mindset. And I'm going to go to the next person will be Cindy, of course, but I'll discuss this in a minute. Why remote landlord remotes remains a high viable strategy. Rental demand stays strong. Your technology and systems make remote management much easier, right? It wasn't like 20 years ago, right? I had 100 doors up in Lehigh Valley. I had to drive up there every single weekend with my motley crew and doing all these checklists of items. It was tough living in Philadelphia and driving to the Lehigh Valley. I sold all the properties and just went back to the properties that made me the most amount of money. And now there's more management presence there, and AI for managing properties than ever before. And the geographic arbitrage becomes possible, right? Because tenants can work remotely. You can invest in markets where purchase and rent yields better cash flow. This fits a lot of different strategies for clients that are maybe in California on the West Coast, where things are just lopsided and overpriced. They could place their money better in better markets, right? Some key challenges, though, and pitfalls to watch: maintenance and vendor oversight, obviously regulatory and local market variation, and then tenant quality and retention becomes more critical. And some tactical considerations for 26 remote landlording: market selection, like prioritizing markets where you can still buy at favorable numbers, good purchase price, rental numbers and demand, positive cash flow. Does it look like the market has some job growth and some population inflow and remote friendly infrastructure like in internet amenities? Avoid markets where oversupply rental units are weakening demographics, might increase vacancy and turnover risk. Make sure your systems and vendor network is strong. Local property management partner or vendor network you can trust. Underwriting and exit strategy. You need to understand underwriting models, right? Burn, hold, building conservative rental growth assumptions, 2 to 3% rather than super aggressive, since a lot of analysts are anticipating moderate growth, right? So that BRRRR model, you really need to ensure the real refinance step. And, for flipping, transitioning to hold, if you're flipping and then as far as remotely, you'll have to have an upside of long-term rental growth if it doesn't flip, right? And then marketing and tenant experience, that's where a good realtor comes into play, understanding amenities and features that appeal to remote opportunities, managing that you're going to have to trust somebody there, on boots on the ground. Obviously, risk mitigation, like there's a contingency fund you have to have in place. Monitoring local vacancy trends and rent trends, ensuring the remote location is diverging not negatively, and staying compliant with local laws and eviction rules, licenses. How this plays into your skill set. You already have probably, hopefully, systems and scaling investor era underwriting in place, right? So your ability needs to underwrite deals. You need to have talking with asset-based lenders and non-QM financing, your power team and your mindset, the vendors, the property managers, the contractors, right, is how that remote piece works. And then you have to have an educational role and keep learning, right? And some takeaways I want you to think about this, right? More feasible and potentially higher yield than ever before remote landlording, right? Market selection, strong remote, system vendors, tenant experience, and making the whole refinance strategy work for you from a distance. So these are things you need to think about in your real estate investment property audit checklist. Cindy, good morning and thank you for your patience. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, real estate investment property audit checklist.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Hi, everyone. Cindy Ariona here. I'm in Salt Lake City and Park City. I'm a realtor here, and I own a brokerage in Istanbul, Turkey. It's my 21st year, got a team on the ground there, and that's where the bulk of my business has been since rates did the big check in July of 2022. About perfectly. And so, Joe, before I got into real estate, a number of years ago, I was a stockbroker for 6 years. I follow the stocks very closely, and I feel very uneasy about the dollar. So I'm following them very closely, diversing different money, mostly in the metals. But what happened 2 weeks ago really caught my attention. So it was the day after the big four banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank.
Yep.
All had their earnings release, and they all did good. Now, with the shutdown, we couldn't get a lot of the numbers, the labor numbers, the different CPIs and the GDPs and all that we were supposed to be getting. Haven't been able to get accurate clarity on those. So here's what happened. The following day, 3 regional banks had a big crack. And regional banks is what I pay really close attention to. So the biggest one was Zions Bank that's here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And so they did a charge off of a $50 million real estate company, had taken a loan, stopped paying, and so they charged it off. And that resulted in the stock tanking. Some reports said 11, others said 13. I didn't check the sticker because I was moving on to make some other trades when that happened. So, point is, they lost $1 billion in market cap in one day with that charge off. Next to go, right behind them was Western Alliance and Jeffries. So we had 3 of them with a crack. And Joe, that is a leading major sign in my books.
Yeah, I would agree with you because
Yeah.
TD just announced here, which is regional over here, the closure of 60 branches. So, and that we don't know all the reasoning behind that. So that's big. That's a lot of retail too, as well. When I see the weaker dollar, Cindy, it concerns that U.S. real estate is relatively cheaper for investors, especially in holding foreign currencies. Cost of importing goods and rehab maintenance expenses could be impacted with the weaker dollar, right? Interest rates are not coming down as quick as everybody wants because the media is just kind of like topsy-turvy. Inflation's still okay. That's the bizarre thing. And I'm seeing a lot of reports with AI compressing jobs. So we don't have job reports right now, Cindy. So it's hard to see what those reports look like for the Fed. And they don't even they obviously have way more data than we would ever have. But very interesting what you're saying about Zions Bank. They've been around forever. I knew that name when I came into the industry. I didn't know that you were in the stock space at one time. So I am scared of you even more than ever before because I know you probably have daggers for fingers. That's great. And handling a business in Turkey ain't easy for a young lady. So I'm sure that's interesting as well. Some implications to what Cindy's saying really means right now you got to really hone in on your target markets with diverse demand. Monitor supply side and cost risk, what this looks like going into 26. Using financing thoughtfully, and timing is everything. Like I went to a rehab construction tour yesterday. He's going to get done just around in December. He's going to list it right away. I don't know who's buying December 31st a nice home to live in a really cute community with a low tax base. But I would say wait. I would like do a preview and then just don't list it till January, post New Year's, because nobody's really looking or focusing. Really, if you could hold out post Super Bowl is always a smart spot. But I appreciate that, Cindy. I will look into that article a little more, and thank you for that. We have another new. Go ahead. Any final insight before we go to June?
Yeah, real quickly. What it reminded me of, and this all happened just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of 2023. Just not that long ago.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley National Bank, and everybody's, oh, who's that? Never heard of them. No, the gold standard in Silicon Valley is who SVB was. And here's my point. 3 weeks before that bank fell, and then, oh, well, who took that toxic asset? That's another conversation. 3 weeks before it fell, the government came in because they got their little committee, and they go around and they do check the health of all of the banks. That's their job. That's what they do. 3 weeks before that bank fell, they came in and signed off and gave them a stellar rating. 3 weeks later, it falls, collapses, and the end. That's how quickly. That's how irrelevant that bank check was for me. Okay, back to you, Joe.
No, see, you got me something to read this afternoon after I get back from the gym, so I appreciate that. I love reading data like that. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of craziness right now in the banking industry. I think my prediction is the banks are going to be unregulated by sometime in 26 post the removal of Powell at the Fed. That's a prediction, a thought, but we'll see. I think the IRS might go into the dumpster fire real soon too. They're becoming more relevant. So a lot of big changes in the golden year of 26 and our 250th anniversary of our country. So June, good morning. Welcome up. Brief overview of who you are, what you do, and do you have a statement or question in regards to our subject today, real estate investment property audit checklist? June, are you there? June going once. June going twice. Losing my voice as we speak. Sorry about that, guys.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
No problem. What's going on, June? How are you? Good. What question or statement do you have in regards to our subject today? You came up and raised your hand. You there, June? June going once. June going twice. June will come back to you. I can't hear you. Wherever you are, you're in a bad spot. But I got your text, so I will send you a scope of work out. So that'll be out. I'll send you some information on everything we discussed today, as well as a checklist for DSCR and fixed to rent, fixed to flip, and or new construction, so you can be able to better underwrite your deals. Felix, some thoughts and final thoughts to our discussion today. Any oversight and insight to what we've been discussing this morning?
No, that doesn't get stated enough. Just all of these different things that you need to just make sure that you look out for. The key component is really in this market, getting a strong team, making sure that you vet your team, making sure that you get referrals from people that you know that are super successful at it, and just stay on top of it. Like Steven said, you got to manage the team in which that you have. You can't just depend on the factor that, hey, well, this is what they did before, this is how they operate. You definitely want to stay on top of them. And then just sidebar what Cindy was saying about those banks. I definitely, because then and still do pay attention to different news and the different outlets. And I did pay attention to that. Not only did they give them a good rating, when that bank got bought over by the next bank, they actually insured all of the money. Like typically it's only supposed to go up to 250,000. They insured all of the money for that bank. So yeah, you got to pay attention to those things because they definitely affect our lives. We might think like, oh, it's nothing. And especially like I tell people growing up until I got into real estate made me pay attention to different numbers and different factors that not just what goes on what's around us, but we got to pay attention to what goes on in the world because the things that happen in the world, they affect us. And these are the different ways that they affect us. And if you're not paying attention to that, then you become those people that are constantly crying, like, well, why is this happening? Or why is this? Well, if you paid attention to what's going on and you really follow the money, then you're going to really see that the answers are always there. And that's my wisdom and knowledge. And I'm done.
Felix, thank you as always. Yeah, I've never seen a shape-shifting market like this, but the best part of it, I've been in the industry 25 years, 36 years as a licensed agent as well, an investor, second generation, and I get the big picture. I mean, experience and transactional wounds from successes and failures are so more important now because I think the talent pool that you have has limited exposure to failure and successes and transactional experience. That's my concern. And hopefully there's enough talent still in the business that can transpose that to the next generation in this space. Because it's getting, I mean, if you're not on top of it, like this morning, I got up this morning, I had 3 newsletters out, 3 postings out, had a video interview with Yordell putting together events out, posted a couple loans into the software, had a couple emails I had to address, have this podcast, go to the gym, stay healthy, stay clear. It's a lot going on. My final thoughts to this, and Felix, thank you as always. I'm going to reach out to you this week with the new software because you're going to be one of my first guinea pigs. Excuse my French.
No,
I'm a guinea pig, but you're a guinea pig. So yeah, we got to talk about that because it's really good, and I think you're going to be very happy with this change right now. But I'll make some further announcements next week on the podcast coming up. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, my final thoughts heading into November 2025, right? It's with the podcast, the CE workshops, mentoring content. There's a high level of strategic takeaways that I'm thinking in my head that I think are going to impact all of us, as investors, as agents, as lenders. I think we have to stay calm, of course, take care of our health as always. And affordability is clearly a dominant challenge, and sales volume is slowing despite rising inventory. Okay. And home growth is modest, right? Supply remains constrained in many markets, but there's a growing divergence by region. You need to understand that, right? Investment and development trends are shifting. Focus increasing on sustainability, hybrid work capability, mixed use, and secondary to tertiary markets. How is this going to impact the real estate agent? Implications? Expertise and advisory role matter more than ever. Content themes to ride now, right? Affordability strategies, the secondary to tertiary markets, sustainability tech in the real estate. If you're not on AI, don't go start taking the class to think about doing AI. If you're not in it, you're already behind. You better hire somebody right away. Inventory investor dynamics, networking and partnerships become more strategic. Branding your educator role, right? I mean, are you delivering some CE courses? What are you bringing differently than the other agents, right? What are the implications for the investors? Cash flow resilience over speculative appreciation, select markets and asset types. Prepare for refinancing and exit strategy risk. Value creation matters more. You got to be putting out newsletters and having podcast interviews to stay abreast of what's in the market. Create a dual tracking workshop, both for agents and investors, right? Updating your audit and checklist tools that we discussed today, right? Marketing and branding, lean into prepared for 25, going into the market boom. You got to know what's going on. You got to cultivate these relationships with lenders, insurance agents, lawyers, CPAs, bookkeeping, you can't stay enclosed, man. You got to really be out there. And in short, I think 2025 will not be a repeat of the 2020 or 21 boom years, but it will still offer some strong opportunity and deals done right. I think markets selected carefully, value created intentionally. I think the sweet spot right now is education, networking, leveraging, and strategic execution, right? You got to think about this all the way through in providing audit checklists to your clients, whether you're the client yourself and or the real estate agent. And I think it's so more important than ever before to be that hybrid real estate agent and investor than ever before, with wholesaling being regulated in a lot of states, with real estate agents now wholesaling and assigning contracts. A lot of this creative hodgepodge stuff that's out there. At the end of the day, people need a good real estate agent, a good lender, a good power team, whether remote or local to their market or regional to their market. This is the time to pivot and a huge opportunity if you stay abreast of everything. AI, branding, marketing. This is a 7 days a week type of environment. So important to stay on top of your game. The last 30 days since Landmark shut their operations down, I've been drinking from a fire hose, but I stayed consistent in what I was doing. My marketing, my SEO, my communication. I felt caught up and almost controlling the matrix by October 30th. I was controlling it. I was in front of it, tackling it as it was coming in, not feeling pressured and overwhelmed. So to adjust in this space and what we're doing right now for our clients, agents, investors, real estate professionals with the new white label portal that we're rolling out is huge, because it's so important to have teamwork in this than ever before, locally, regionally, nationally. I want to thank everyone that came up. The moderators today, of course, were awesome. I thank our audience for their participation, of course. I appreciate all the texts for the scope of work. If there's anything else you need, please text me at 215-290-5108. I'll provide all the things that I send to all my clients. I want to make sure whether you work with me or work with somebody else, you have the right information to be at the starting line, as always. I want to thank our sponsors, of course, and our associates like Yardell Perkins of Perkatech, providing all the social media provisions here that we're getting 4,000 views a week right now on this podcast, sometimes 5. I'm really excited about that, and our friendship and our association. Again, he's been my backbone, one of my backbones here with this transition since Landmark operations shut, and the transition to the next level on our CRMs and our notifications to our clients. I want to thank Linda Pelagas, as always, with Really 411. She is providing people to interview and bring onto this podcast and on Clubhouse as well. Thank Eric Moss of MB Capital Solutions. I mean, I want to thank our support, our hosts that helped me with these events in Lehigh Valley and Philadelphia. Yardell is our backbone to those events in Philadelphia. Dave Bergio with Trifecta Credit Solutions in Lehigh Valley. We got Joe Rodriguez down up in Newark and Van Robinson up in Newark. We work with Ike down in Maryland with Felix Buchanan. The white label courses we have, love to expand that nationally or regionally right now. So if anybody would like to host or co-host a white label underwriting course in their market to kind of, whether from a recruiting perspective, CE perspective, driving investors toward you and, elevate toward you, let me know on that. We're here every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing education, networking, and strategy always. We have subject matter now scheduled to the end of the year. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, Clubhouse, wherever you need to follow me. Let's have a one-on-one this week. Let's not wait. My quote this morning: you can't give your life more time, so give the time you have left more life. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will be ending the room in the next 30 seconds. And thank you as always.